Hello and welcome to this case solution for the Design Thinking Specialist interview in Ørsted. My name is Claus Allan Christensen and I will quickly walk you through some thoughts I have done about the case that we will talk about on Tuesday. So overall I have created a small plan for the design thinking project. There was 4 weeks available and I've tried to split them up into some activities that I will go through now during this little video. Basically, we will have 3 different sprints: a research sprint, design sprint, and a refinement sprint. And the timing of those is a little bit fluctuant, but what I would like to do is to focus the first week on research, start with a day of ramp up for the team to get together and work together, and then a short prep day before starting the design sprint, which is a 5-day activity. And then finally at the end, also a little bit flexible in time, would be a refinement sprint where we would take the outcome of the design sprint and refine it even further. Try to allocate some people below. As you can see, the core team, which is consisting of the UX person, the product manager, and the technical architect, will be allocated the full time for the project. I believe that would be sort of the core team that will continue throughout the project. Then we have the specialists, the business developers, that only had 6 days available. So we will mainly focus on having them available during the design sprint, but also try to get them integrated a little bit during the other sprints, just to make sure they're in the loop and we get their knowledge as well. And then user involvement in general as much as possible. But of course, during the research sprint, we will have a lot of that. And then during the design sprint, if possible, it would be great to get users input there. And then especially during the refinement sprint, we would have a lot of iterative loops where we would get the users in. So just to look a little bit more in detail to what would happen in these different sprints. The research sprint is basically a sprint where we try to get as much knowledge about the users as possible. We will get especially about the context and the situations that they're in. The overall purpose is to find out what is the right problem to solve. Way too often we see how people start working on the wrong problem. So knowing as much as possible about the users will help us solve the right problem. The approach would be at least to have 5 interviews done by the core team, and if needed, some sort of external moderator, depending on the skills of the UX person in the design team, or in the core team. Ideally, we should do the interviews in context. And a rough method, which from my experience worked quite well, is to start with an open interview to get to know the user and the person that we are talking to. Then to map the existing journey on a piece of paper, and then actually go through the actual journey with the user where they show us what's happening and what they're doing. And then at the end, try to go back and look at the map that was created and talk about the enactment and see what kind of differences were there in how the user was thinking the journey would be, and then how it actually went. Some outcomes could be user profiles, where we talk about goals and list quotes and add pains and pleasures and so on. Empathy maps that are a good tool to understand what people really want and how they see the solutions. And then of course user journeys to look over time what the different activities are. And finally, lots of photo and video material that can be used to be shared in the following workshops and to create some sort of a shared understanding of who the users actually are. The next step would be a design sprint, and in this case, it's sort of a mixture between, you could say, a Google design sprint with a bit of flavor. I've been quite inspired by seeing this 5 mindset methodology, but overall, the purpose is to create a shared empathy for all the stakeholders, so we all have the same idea of what needs to be solved. Again, identify and agree on the right problem to solve, and then start exploring the solution space throughout the sprint. So the approach would be like a 5-day concentrated sprint with a large group consisting of the core team and then the specialist. And if we need additional decision makers, we should get those in as well. They might not have to be there all the time now. But it would be great to have also real users in there to help us keep the focus on their needs. The outcome should be a clear and agreed mission for the project. probably will not get to more than paper prototypes of possible solution directions. But most importantly, to have sort of a shared and agreed direction for where the project should head off, and then in some sort of illustrated value propositions in one way or another, depending on how far we would get. A quick plan is sort of following the classic schedule of these 5-day sprints. The first day about empathizing. Here's this little warm-up exercise that I will go through with you on the interview. But I will keep that secret for now. But in general, understanding the users, understanding the context, understanding the technology and business environment, and then try and map that, and from that create some sort of a shared mission for day 1. For day 2, it will be about ideation, the classic ideation activities, and there will be lots of brainstorming, sketching, and then trying to organize all that from that day at the end of the day. Day 3, evaluate all the different ideas based on desirability, feasibility, and viability, and then sort of select some of the most promising innovation areas. Trying to detail those into some storyboards or refine them a bit further. On day 4, creating prototypes of storyboards, so creating something tangible that can be used for testing. Focusing very much on the experience and not so much on the enablers. And then on day 5, we would test the solutions again with real users, and maybe also after some sort of debrief, wrap up and refine the value propositions and the story behind what we're actually trying to achieve here. So that was the design sprint. Finally, the refine sprint, which was the more sort of solution-based work, where we tried in iterative steps to refine the outcome from the design sprint into more real solutions. So basically getting from paper prototypes into actual working solutions. And as well, try to validate some of the assumptions that we've had along the way. The approach would be to iteratively develop and concurrently evolve the design and the business case or the minimal viable product, as well as understand the technical constraints and the concept that we could use. We would then include users every 2 or 3 days for some user testing to have sort of used the lean UX approach to use rapid iterative cycles, and then involve specialists and business development on a review basis or as much as it makes sense. So the outcome should be the final outcome of the project, basically MVP proposal with a strong understanding of what is sort of what it takes to make it real and what kind of impact we can have. We would also have a validated UX concept and list of supporting activities or tools for the backlog. There was at least 3, it was stated in the problem definition. And basically we should have some material for selling the idea into the organization. So for instance, a video explaining the MVP. Quick plan. Day 1 to day 3 would be sort of iteration cycle 1, where we first of all, of course, agree on the sprint activities and the purpose of the time ahead, and then run the first iteration, basically build, test, and refine on all levels, not just on the UX concept, but also on the from a viability point of view and from a feasibility technical point of view. Second iteration, more or less the same, and then set up about a couple of days for storytelling at the end to create the supporting material that is needed to sort of sell in the idea to the organization and to those who will actually implement it. And then basically we said at the end of the 4-week plan, we would have sort of a wrap-up workshop here where we would also like to include the specialist in business development, where we sort of present the final outcome of the project. So finally, some facilitator considerations. We have seen some risks that in other projects that I think are relevant for this as well. Basically, when you start introducing design thinking, which is a new way of thinking and sort of getting people out of their comfort zone, there can be some risk that people will object and sort of cross their arms. So first of all, if this is the first time a project like this is run, it's very much about starting the right people with an open mindset, making it fun, and show what they can expect, and create an atmosphere of fail fast and don't be afraid of messing up. It's all it's all an experiment. Second risk listed was reluctance to collaborate due to former silos and mistrust. So if we have very people from different organizations, they might have mistrust toward the other organizations. That can typically be a problem in large organizations. For mitigating this, we should allow for a fresh start and plan for some social time to build these personal relations that are fundamental for collaboration. And apart from the social, also give them enough time to discuss with each other about what their what are their priorities and what does their work look like, so they can start to get empathy for each other's work. And in that case, we can also make sure that we can sort of get a lot of synergies between the different work teams. Finally, the project plan, if it's way too optimistic, that might be. This is based on some quick thoughts and with a very compressed schedule. The mitigation for this is basically to allow for adjustments along the way and iterate as we go along. We should keep a focus on creating outcome to make sure that we get somewhere and something, so it's not just the discussions, but we should allow for less iterations if needed. For instance, the refinement phase could be optimized. But in general, we should still be strict on timing, as we've seen that deadlines motivate. So this was the quick response to the case study. I hope you have been able to follow the video, and I look forward to talking to you on Tuesday. Bye-bye.